Every single decision that you have made right up until this point has brought you here. And you saw the title of this video. It is about choosing your life. And I'm here to basically give you a point that I've been keeping in my head every time I've been making decisions, even like day-to-day decisions and not necessarily massive ones. And it is that this fundamental phrase, you choose your life. And it might seem obvious at first, but let me explain what I mean by that. When I say you choose your life, what I mean is in every single choice you make, whether that is, doing a bad habit or doing a good habit or doing something that, isn't gonna amount to anything or is, that's the point. Every time you make a decision, such as doing a bad habit, that's you choosing that bad life right there and there. That's the life that you didn't even want. Because I'm assuming if you're a person who has a lot of these bad habits, let's take, for example, one thing, I don't know, you do a lot of drugs or something, and that's a normal thing in your life. Every time you decide to do a drug or do any sort of drug, to be honest, you take it, that's the decision you've made to make that part of your life again, because you've done it before, obviously. So let's not lie here. You've done this before. It's not your first time doing it. So every time you make that decision, you're choosing that to be part of your life, and you're choosing to be living the life of a person who takes drugs. Same with literally anything. But every time you choose to do, for example, something productive, like do your work, you are picking to live the life of someone who is a very productive person and does that work. Apply this to any bad habit or any good habit, and it comes out the same way, because really what you're living right now is a product of your prior choices. Everything you've decided beforehand has amounted to the life that you're living right at this very minute. So you might say that there's also other factors at play. There's other people in your life and whatnot. But, certain people you chose to bring into your life, like, your friends and stuff. You chose to make them part of your life. Certain people, maybe you didn't, but, you let them have a certain effect on your life. So, sure, there's things you can't control. But there is enough that you can control if you can watch this video for me to be able to comfortably say that you have chosen the life that you're currently living in, right? So think about this every time you go to do a habit, a good one or a bad one. It definitely works better with bad ones, but with good ones, it can encourage you to do them as well. You're the one choosing your life. So when you're choosing to do this thing, it's ultimately up to you. If you didn't want to be a person who, is addicted to weed, for example, you wouldn't pick weed every evening to smoke, for example. That's the life that you're choosing, though. Every time you do, you're just making that part of the norm for yourself. But you might say, okay, what about like exceptions? What about mistakes? We all make choices which are ultimately mistakes, and that's fine. I'm not saying not to make mistakes, because you're obviously gonna make wrong decisions sometimes. But the whole point of this is it'll make you think through your decisions first a little bit, because you'll think, am I choosing the life I want when you're doing this? Like, once this becomes part of the normal process for you, you'll realize that you're a bit slower to make decisions about things like bad habits and good habits. But anyways, back to the mistakes thing. So sure, it can make you avoid certain stupid things, certain stupid mistakes, but of course you'll still make them. I'm not saying this will eliminate you making mistakes altogether. But the difference between mistakes and bad habits is that bad habits are mistakes done multiple times. And the whole point of mistakes is that you learn from them and you don't do them again, right? But that's harder than it. That's easier said than done. That's what I wanted to say. So when you make mistakes, you apply the same logic. You choose your life every time. So when the opportunity to make that mistake again comes up, you have to just pick the other thing. You have to pick not to do it, because you can't let the mistake become the norm and define you, because then you'll be choosing the mistake. You're going to be choosing your life. You're going to be choosing that. That's going to be ultimately your choice. So that's on mistakes. And yeah, think about it every time. You know, you choose so many different things in your life, and so many people will talk about how, you know, their life is bad, but it's not even up to their hands. But it is, because there are people who have started at much, much worse positions than whatever you're in right now. I say that with quite a lot of confidence because I expect most people who can watch YouTube, and also have the time to watch a YouTuber like me, have time to, you know, do things with their life and potentially improve it. Bloody hell, there's a fly here, or a moth or something. But if you can watch this right now, chances are you've got already enough control over your life to start making changes, because there's people who have started at much lower points than you and made it out to be 100 times better. So your situation practically is entirely dependent on you, and every decision you make, every choice you choose ultimately will culminate in that life. So if you decide that you don't want to live a life of sin, really at the core of it, at the very core of living a life without sin, or I mean, it's not necessarily possible, but if you want to live a life with less sin, you just have to pick not to sin most of the time. And of course you're going to sin some of the times. Of course you make mistakes. I've already talked about that. But you don't let the mistake define you. You don't choose the mistake again if you can. And even if you do choose it multiple times, make it stop at some point, because obviously you need to stop choosing that mistake at some point, right? And make a habit of going to confession, for example. That's another thing that, you know, you can choose that, and that's already a step forward to the life that you just pledged you wanted to live. Same with, like, I'll give you an example of myself. You know, I really wanted this YouTube thing to take off, but I don't choose enough times to make these videos. Really, if you look back, I've made 30 videos, including this one. And that is not a lot considering how long I've wanted this to work, alright? So if I had just chosen to do this more, I'd probably already be living a life that I'm currently wishing I'd be living, you know? But there's no point about wishing, there's more point about acting. So I made a pretty good choice today. I decided to get up and actually film this, because this choose your life thing has been going on in my head so long that it's now starting to push over. It started in my bad habits, you know, in the things I was doing wrong. It would ring in my head, say, you're choosing your life when you're doing this, you're choosing this. But now it's kind of starting to spill over to the things I need to be doing actively, not avoiding, but the things I need to be doing. So now I've chosen to do this video. I'm going to try and choose to do them more. I hope that out of this you got something, that you decide to choose your better life a little bit more. Choose the good habits and don't choose the bad habits, you know, and keep that in mind. You're choosing your life every time you make a decision, whether it's big or small. You're choosing your life. You're ultimately in control here. So that's about it for today, or for this one. Have faith and keep going. I'll see you in the next one.